The fantastic buildings and facilities of a school are wonderful, but what makes a school run are the faculty, and that's really it. I mean, parents send their kids to Kinkaid and re-enroll their kids and want to send their kids because of the quality of the faculty and staff.
Whenever I was in the process of attempting to hire somebody or interviewing people for positions, I looked for those people who clearly knew and loved particular truths and just ideally had an infectious enthusiasm for it. I used to love to interview teachers, and it didn't take very long to decide whether or not this is someone that I would like to be taught by and someone who was going to contribute to life and learning in meaningful ways.
Teachers at Kinkaid have always relied on mentors from the previous generation.
The teachers who were here were a wonderful group of colleagues, and I really learned how to teach from those people. Art Goddard was the middle school principal. At that time, he was the only person who'd ever been middle school principal. Mrs. Kinkaid had hired him, and he also taught history. I'd say it took about 6 people to replace, to do all of the things he did. And there was an English teacher, Selena Kilpatrick, who truly did just take me under her wing.
Barry Moss was brilliant and had wonderfully high standards, and he just exuded that sense of how good is this and how good do you think you can be. I followed him as principal. His last year as upper school principal was the year before I came. And he was extraordinarily supportive. I really worried about coming down to Kinkaid as an upper school principal, given the fact that he was going to be around. I mean, I thought, you know, am I going to be undermined? Am I going to be second guessed? Barry never did any of that.
Now, you mentioned Barry's name to anybody who's been here, and they are immediately intimidated. Barry was a delightful person, extremely brilliant, extremely talented, but intimidating. So he gave me the textbooks and said, go teach. You know, it was absolutely, you know, you hear these stories of baptism by fire, sink or swim, whatever. That's what this was, okay? I had no idea. So that first year was really, really tough, but he worked with me. He was very, very supportive. I could go to him and say, Barry, I don't know how to handle this. And he was, let me share with you and I'll help you, actually. I did not know Mrs. Kinkaid, but I knew John Cooper, Art Goddard, and Barry Moss, who were 3 of the great icons, if you will.
Longtime Kinkaid faculty appreciates the feeling of collegiality.
It's a reflection on John Cooper, the camaraderie, the colleagueship that was true all through the school.
Couples that were teachers that loved to teach together could do that. In a lot of schools you can't do that. They won't hire the man and the wife, you know, which I think is a real shame. And I think that gives a lot of family feeling to Kinkaid.
Facilities were different. Of course, there were no computers, no labs, that sort of thing, so you didn't have all that space taken up. But in any case, we were closely united in a fairly small area, and that just meant for more contact. It was a very cohesive faculty and some quite remarkable people.
We just had a great group of 6 teachers that taught together down there, and we all got along, and everybody worked for the best of the children.
As in all of life, times have changed for teachers.
I didn't know it at the time, but I cut my pedagogical teeth on probably the toughest group of students. Not just Kinkaid, it was a tough time to teach. You're talking about the late 60s, early 70s, where it was very difficult to get kids motivated. They were anti-establishment. We had an underground newspaper. You know, our paper's called the Falcon, but this was called the Pigeon. Okay, and it was quite a quite ornery newspaper. Didn't pull any punches, and the kids were just hard to get involved. I mean, they just, today's kids, I think, the problem is perhaps the reverse. It's hard to keep them from getting too involved.
I started at Kinkaid as a substitute, and actually that was not unusual. Kinkaid at that time had a very long established faculty. The tradition, I think, in all businesses was people stayed a longer time in a job. There was not as much mobility in society as today. I was, lucky there was a man teaching history who left in the middle of the year. And I was asked to come permanently for the rest of that. It was most of the spring semester. And then at contract time, I was offered a contract. And so for me, it was relatively easy. And today we have a very elaborate hiring process that involves committees and interviews and whatever. In those days, it was much more informal. And so for somebody to just sort of be hired was not unusual.
The school, faculty-wise, to probably the benefit of the students, is much more specialized. When I came here, you mentioned that I coached baseball. Well, private schools have an uncanny ability to locate any talent that you might have or that they suspect that you might have and put it to some use.
Changes in fashion have also occurred over the years.
What kids wear, that is one of my favorite topics, and I only wish that when I started, I had started a fashion museum. Because if I had collected whatever the in shoe and the in purse of the moment, I would have a true collection. So we've gone through the Cole Haan shoes and the Dooney and Burke purses and socks, the fashion in socks. Do you want long socks, short socks? Whatever we say, they want the opposite.
One thing that has remained mostly constant is student nature.
The kids themselves, I don't really think have changed that much. It's kind of interesting, even with all the technology, and that has changed, but kids still come in with the same excuses for not doing their work that they came in with 30 years ago.
So it's a larger student body. I think it is a more talented student body, a more diverse student body, and yet it's still a family.
Some Kinkaid teachers are so much a part of the school, they have joined the lexicon.
Well, truthfully, my note-taking, and it is sometimes referred to as the Cooney method, but it really goes back to Art Goddard. When he was teaching history when I came, and middle school principal, and I observed what he was doing with 8th grade. And so when I then started teaching 6th grade, I thought, well, if I just do a simplified version of that, it'll make it easier by the time they're in the 8th grade. So truly, it came from him. There are many, many note-taking styles. I don't think it makes any difference what you use. The point is you have to use a system. It is amusing to me because former students will often talk about how they still use the note-taking method that I taught them. In some cases, I can tell by what they're saying that no, they don't. They think they do, and they use the basic concept. I don't tell them, but I really don't. I don't think they're doing exactly what they were taught in 6th grade, and probably shouldn't be.
Kinkaid has offered teachers a degree of freedom and a sense of being appreciated.
We tried always here, and they still do, of course, to make it enjoyable, a joy, a real joy. And that's what I said to myself also too when I decided to keep doing this, because where else could I get this feeling to be able to pick the things I want to do, the shows you want to do, you have the children you want. When you go into professional life, of course, on the stage or whether it be opera and especially Broadway, you have to do everything they want you to do, no matter what. Even if you're a great singer, you're still, it's that conductor over there or somebody else. Maybe I'm spoiled because with what Kinkaid offered, backing all of this the way they did, that we felt that we could do almost anything within limits, within bounds of taste, of course.
But there is a sense when you work here, and that's why a lot of people stay here as long as they do. There is a sense of belonging, there is a sense of empowerment. One of the advantages, the big advantages to me, I wasn't even sure I wanted to teach. After I got here and spent a couple years at it, then I knew that I had found my calling. But one of the things that this school provides that not all schools do or perhaps can is a private school latitude where you're not beholden to a state textbook committee. You don't have to follow all kinds of prefabricated lesson plans designed by somebody else. You can use your own books. You're free within reason to teach the courses you choose. There is a feeling that you're doing something worthwhile. You're doing it together. And you're appreciated. You know, at a lot of schools, unfortunately, you have to become an administrator to move up the salary ladder, you know, that kind of thing. And you're not going to make yourself independently wealthy teaching at a private school. But nevertheless, they appreciate education enough to reward their teachers sufficiently to stay on. Teaching is difficult. If you try to do a good job, it's a tough job. But it would be tougher, I think, in different ways at most other places.
I was so happy here because, like I've always said to the parents, we have great parents that support these shows. Some in so many years, they were sewing the costumes themselves, and they certainly could afford to buy them. You know, unbelievable. I would see them because the costume room was right above my room, the old hall. There they are, going up and down every day, doing this for these kids, for their own kids, you know. Where did you see that happen all the time? You know?
The 8th grade goes to Washington every year, and for many years I went. But one year we went to Boston. I had never been to Boston. Before we went, I told my group how I was quite excited about the Freedom Trail, and so we get up the day we're to walk the Freedom Trail. It is just pouring rain. Several groups were opting out. My girls came to me and said, "We know you're excited about it. We've got our rain gear, let's go." And so we did. It was just a very endearing experience to me.
For Kinkaid's award-winning teachers, the accolades are cherished.
It is true that I have been recognized several times by the school with various awards, and it is just the highest moment for a teacher. To be recognized by the Alumni Association means that your former students, and some of them by that time are actually parents of current students, so it validates what you've done. The times when I have been recognized have been the greatest moments really of my life in a way.
For a teacher, their calling offers a deeply personal reward.
The real kind of seductive allure of teaching is when you understand that you have been a part of some significant growth that a student has achieved. When you understand that growth, that you had something to do with that growth. Not that you pushed a button or not that you were, you know, the main source, but that you had something to do with it, and you can see the difference in that kid, whether it's, you know, in athletics or academics or maturity or whatever. When you see that, that's hard to walk away from.
A teacher's got to show enthusiasm for his or her subject, or the kids won't be enthused. And it can be very, very contagious. I didn't have any special tricks, didn't have time for too many tricks, honestly, but just it meant so much to me that I was just sort of hoping that it could rub off on them.
I believe that a good teacher challenges students, and I believe that a good teacher is willing to tell a student, this is not your best. I feel that my job is not just to help them be good, but to really help them realize what the best within themselves is, and to achieve that and to set high goals. And I believe that to achieve something worthwhile, you really have to work for it. That what comes easily, well, that's great, but you have to go beyond that. And sometimes students say that I'm too hard and too demanding and all of those things, and I don't really mind that they say that. For a teacher to be successful, a teacher has to work hard too. It takes hard work from the teacher and hard work from the students to really produce an admirable product.
Kinkaid's headmasters have overseen a faculty second to none.
If I tried to name the ones who I thought were excellent, I'd offend someone because I'd leave a lot out. But you know, I think that some of the teachers at Kinkaid would be among the very best teachers I've encountered in my 40 years in education. And I've worked at 4 excellent schools.
There's seldom a day goes by that I don't have an image of some extraordinary colleague that I knew here. Over the years I've known, in all of my headmastering days, my teaching days, I've known some extraordinary colleagues, but Kinkaid was the top of the tree in that regard.
So it's been wonderful to see that as these great titans of the classroom have retired, that we've been able to identify and attract and keep some exceptional faculty.
One could go anywhere in the school at any time of the day, at any level of the school, and see excellence in teaching.